This is a deeper listen from KEXP, the show we talk with musicians about the thoughts and experiences that shape their music. I'm Emily Fox. August marks the 104th anniversary of women being granted the right to vote in the United States.
We were given the right to vote in 1920, and that was a victory. But I think it's just sort of the acknowledgement that while that was a victory, there's still work to be done.
That's Aoife O'Donovan. She's also in the bluegrass bands Crooked Still and I'm With Her. Earlier this year, she released a solo record that's all about the suffrage movement that led to women's right to vote. It's called All My Friends. The album is accompanied in part by a brass quartet and a chamber orchestra, with backing vocals in some songs by the San Francisco Girls Chorus.
Watching on the Tennessee dawn is lifting o'er the fields.
I caught up with O'Donovan back in March to get a history lesson on the movement and discuss where we've come and the work that still needs to be done. But first we talked about the main character in this album, Carrie Chapman Catt.
I was asked to write a piece commemorating the passage of the 19th Amendment, and I kind of found my way to Carrie Chapman Catt through sort of digging up letters and speeches and stories about the sort of the bigger movement. And I was kind of ended up focusing on her for the majority of the tracks because she came alive to me as a historical figure and as a historical character. She was a deeply powerful woman, so much strength of character, and against all odds, she really helped to lead the charge, especially in those final days.
And what was it really about, like, her story that really struck you? Like, was there something that happened in your life when you were researching her that you're like, whoa, that's amazing, or something that like blew you away in the process?
It wasn't really a thing that blew me away or an event that happened in her life. It was more how she used language to really put forth her ideas. I think that the thing that made me want to focus on her specifically for especially tracks like Crisis, the second track on my record, or America Come, I think that's like the seventh track. I really was reading speeches and letters that she had written and given, and finding these phrases that she wrote, in the teens, more than 100 years ago, and feeling like, wow, like this feels like this could be written and given at a rally today in 2020 when I was first started to dive into this music. And I ended up kind of going and sort of creating a little bit of a fictional backstory for her, not so much fictional in its in the facts that I used, but to kind of embody an emotional aspect of the character.
Yeah. So let's talk about those two tracks, Crisis and America Come. So starting with Crisis, you quote some folks from West Virginia in the song Crisis. And, when you were writing this, you were kind of surprised that there were so many people opposed to the suffrage movement when it was happening. Can you talk about those folks from West Virginia that you quote in this song?
Yeah, so I'm kind of quoting, I'm sort of acting as Carrie in that moment, and she's quoting them. And in her original speech, Crisis, which is online, you can find it, she gives that as an example where she talks about this guy in West Virginia who she or a colleague of hers had interviewed. And she asks him, what do you think? What do you think about this? What do you think about suffrage? What do you think about women having the right to vote? And he basically says, we've been keeping women down so long, it would feel so weird if we stopped doing that. And then in the original speech, she says, and then, they turn to his wife and say, what do you think? It's so devastating, honestly, because I feel like we see this so often still, where the woman just says, well, yeah, we've been down so long, we got to stay that way. And she sort of summarizes that as like, that's the movement. That's the movement of those who say nay, is these attitudes that are sort of being put forth by the ones who wear the pants in the relationship, and then the meek next to them are sort of just left to echo those sentiments despite what they really might think on the inside. And certainly some of them really did believe that. But who knows what, if women had more autonomy in those days, what that movement would have been like. It's so fascinating to me.
There was a man in West Virginia. Someone asked him what he thought. He said, we've been keeping women down so long, it would feel so really not. Someone asked his wife the same question. Here's what she'd say: we've been down so long.
There's another quote, from Carrie Chapman Catt in the song America Come that you say is kind of the crux of this album. And the quote is, "What is the democracy for which our world is battling?"
What is the democracy for which the world is battling, for which we offer up our manpower, woman power, money power, our all?
How would you reflect on democracy, where we've come and where we are today?
I think it's interesting as we are now in April of a pretty big year for the general election, but sort of, I think for me, what I've learned in the last 4 years is the importance of local politics and the importance of really trying to be educated on a smaller scale. I think it's very easy to sort of go about your life and sort of say, I vote this way, and I show up at the polls when I can, but always on the general election day. But I think people are really just unaware of how many elections are actually happening in their district at all times. And I just urge people to get involved with their local board of elections and see what's happening and make sure you know what you're voting for. When is your school board election? When are your sheriff elections? Who is your city commissioner, and what are they doing to make your city a better place where you live? And I feel like all of those things, just if you kind of start there, I think it's easier to see the big picture and be able to sort of feel more involved.
Mm-hmm. And you reflect a little more on this idea of democracy in your song Over the Finish Line, and seem to contemplate the world that we're leaving for your own daughter. Tell me more about the reflections you were having while writing this song.
That song is, it's a really sort of dark moment on the album, and it's funny because this album, it does sort of start. There's a lot of hope and there's a lot of positivity, and it's obviously celebrating a win. It's celebrating a victory, right? Like we were given the right to vote in 1920, and that was a victory. But I think it's just sort of the acknowledgement that while that was a victory, there's still work to be done. And there's a line in Over the Finish Line, where I sing it with Anais Mitchell in unison. And I think it's a really powerful moment where we sing, I became a mother trying to figure it out, but everything fills me with dread. Like what will we leave? What will we leave them?
I became a mother trying to figure it out. Everything fills me with dread. What do we leave her? Words stick in my mouth. I hear your voice in my head.
And I think that's something that people have been thinking about since the beginning of time, it seems. I think that this doesn't even feel like a particularly human thing. I think that we're always, once you have children, and even if you don't have children, you are thinking about the younger generation, whether you're a parent, whether you have friends who have kids, or I don't think this is even a particularly like singular experience for a mother. We want to make sure that there's something here because we all want we want our legacy to live on in some way, whether it's the art that we create or the buildings that we build or the infrastructure that we've worked so hard to uphold. I think there's just a lot of thorny questions there.
I do understand, though, that you did think about motherhood a lot more on this record compared to your previous records. How so?
I definitely did. But I'm always somebody who's I never want to sort of put the experience of being a mother above the experience of not being a mother, because I'm just very conscious of that. I feel like it's a different, beautiful experience that some people choose to do and some people don't. And on this record, I was able to sort of go deeper into that, especially on the song Someone to Follow, where I sing about, first I was kind of trying to write a song from the perspective of Carrie Chapman Catt's mother, and just thinking a lot about these mothers of not just the suffragists, but mothers of people, of historical figures, mothers from a different time. And it's funny to think about the actual, the final vote to ratify the 19th Amendment, and the mother of the freshman senator from Tennessee who was really kind of, maybe she was the reason why he voted yes in the end. And there's this great quote from his mother had written him a letter. His name was Harry Byrne, and you can look up that beautiful letter from his mother.
On the night you were born, I cradled you, I held you in my arms. And with every planet in Capricorn, I knew you'd sound my heart. Always fighting a good fight, baby. You're picking up
It's powerful to be the mother, especially the mother of a daughter, and to sort of see her, my daughter, and I've talked about this a lot in interviews for this record. She's only 6 years old, but she's already so aware of, I don't know, just of these little things and these little injustices. And yesterday she was actually listening to an audiobook, a Magic Treehouse book. Do you know that series?
No.
Children's book series? It's great. Anyway, it's about these kids who go back in time, with their Magic Treehouse, all these historical events, and they go back in time to April 15th, 1947, to the Dodgers game, the Brooklyn Dodgers game where Jackie Robinson is playing, and she's learned about Jackie Robinson through this book yesterday, and it was just so cool for her to sort of take in this idea that things weren't always the way they are now, and sort of just starting to learn about these bigger concepts, like, what did it mean? What does racism mean? What does sexism mean? What is prejudice? Because when you're a child, that's not really a part of your experience necessarily. So I don't know. And she's been so excited about this record, and she's always drawing pictures of women holding up vote signs, and it's very cute.
Here in the dark, everything that once was becomes a tiny spark.
So there's a line in your song Daughters that I was curious about. It's, but protected and serene, the rich women are still honing their malevolent skills, growing bolder in their treachery.
Protected and serene, the rich women still are holding their malevolent skills, growing bolder in their treachery.
What's that line about?
That line is also about sort of the movement of the women who were against suffrage. And I think there were a lot of sort of very upper crust women who didn't initially support the right to vote. And they were quoted, there were some quotes of them sort of saying, these women, these are sort of like they're working women, they're not staying at home, and they're so emotional, they're so frivolous, and they just want to be out there. It's almost like the backlash against sort of the Rose of the Riveter types, even though obviously that was much later. But they were looking down upon these women who were on the front lines, really trying to pass this amendment. And growing bolder in their treachery, selling for free, they are those who are willing to vilify. And that the line keeps going with saying they are those who are willing to vilify their sisters across the land and declare them quick to cry, saying, don't trust them with the privilege. Like, so there were women who were saying, no, you can't trust these. You can't give these women the privilege to vote because they're just emotional. And I feel like now that's something that's been sort of co-opted by, white men in office saying, oh, we can't have women in here. This is like, it's their time of the month and all that kind of bullshit, which is absurd.
Their sisters cross the land and declare them quick to cry, saying don't trust them with the privilege. Don't even try.
As you created this album and go back in time 100+ years, where do you think we are today compared to where we were 100 years ago?
I mean, I think we're obviously we've come a long way, and I think it's important to sort of acknowledge that. I think I saw some right-wing person quoted in saying things were better back then. And it's like,
For who?
For who? I mean, maybe yes, we didn't have, people weren't looking at screens and there was less pollution. There are definitely things that were better, but the vast majority of things are so much better now. I mean, like modern medicine and women in science and education and sort of like, I think that we've come a long way. I think that as a woman and as a mother, I think that women in government, women in positions of power in government, the fact that we have not seen much advancement there, to me feels just like really bizarre and sad. And I hope that in at least my daughter's lifetime that we will have women really calling the shots. And I think that that's something that I just feel like needs to go further in the Senate, in Congress, at the presidential level. And I think that starts with local government. So I feel like, like I said at the beginning of this interview, if you can become involved in the local situation and people can really work together and we sort of make room for these other voices that aren't just men, I think that will lead to a much richer society.
That was my conversation with Aoife O'Donovan about her latest album, which is all about the women's suffrage movement. It's called All My Friends. August marks the 104th anniversary of women's right to vote. And to wrap up this podcast, I had her answer the final request for this show, a music recommendation.
I have been really loving the record by my friend Kaya Cater. I was so lucky to get to sing on a song that's called The Witch, and it is such an earworm. It's such a catchy song, but it's also so weird and so quirky. Incredible melodic hook, amazing lyrics, such a cool way she gets to the chorus. There's a great bridge. It has everything I'm looking for in a song.
You're not a friend to me, just a stranger grinning like some sick entertainer. Is this the going trend? Oh, pious pilgrim, your temper is bad. You won't tell me how I got here, I don't know where I'm at. Oh, what a vision when I dreamt I moved through you and burned my name into your chest.
That was a deeper listen. Before you go, please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, rate it, and review it. Those little things go a long way in help spreading the word that this podcast exists, is out there, and is worthy of other people's time. You can also share an episode with a friend or your followers. Again, that also goes a long way. And KEXP is a publicly funded radio station. We rely on listeners to do what we do. The majority of our funding comes from listeners. So if you would like to help financially support this show, that also goes a long way. Think about giving $6 a month. You can donate to help support A Deeper Listen at kexp.org/deeper. And thanks for taking a deeper listen.